Welcome back, mamas. We're going to dive into our week 2 where we talked about stress types. So we're going to start with that. There's 4 stress types, and you would have gotten one of the answers from the link of the quiz that you took. And so I just want to go through those really quickly so that you can kind of identify what your stress type, how that might manifest in your life and in your motherhood. So the first one is fight. And that is the control seeker. So generally speaking, from a fight perspective, their core desire is to have certainty or immediate resolution during conflict. Now remember, these are stress types. So you're not activated in fight when you're not in a stressful event. But this is what's happening when you are in a stress event with your spouse, with a friend, with your kids, even with your own self. I'm a fighter. And so I have fight talk that goes on in my brain just when I'm wrestling with something on my own and not even having a conflict with someone else. The core fear of a fighter is feeling powerless or failing, being seen as weak or ineffective. So how this might look like overfunctioning. This might look like jumping in to fix-it mode when you should pause and wait it out. It oftentimes looks like pushing through. So classically, fighters have that like mind over matter, just handle it, mantras that go on in their brain. They can often micromanage others and then overreact or overplan because they are good at overfunctioning under stress. And so oftentimes fighters you'll see as, CEOs and kind of those high-powered women because they classically overfunction in stress, which can be really helpful in the business world. So they really struggle to delegate, and they really struggle to slow down. They feel safe by taking action, and so if they can control the outcome, it soothes their inner chaos. So taking over external chaos soothes the internal chaos. Isn't that interesting? Number 2 is flight. And so this is your escape artist. They are your peace out. I'm not even going to deal with this. Their core desire is to have relief or perfection even. They just want freedom from the pressure. Take it off of me. Their core fear then is being stuck or trapped, right? So if they want to be pressure free, then anytime somebody puts a lot of pressure on them, it's going to create a ton of emotional discomfort, which they absolutely dislike. This can really look like constant busyness. So like classically, if you have a whole list of things to do and you find yourself like cleaning your closet, that procrastination is a tendency of the flight types. And so they'll oftentimes jump into a new idea or project without completion. It's interesting because there's a whole lot of women who self-classify as ADHD, and that might be a component, but sometimes it just might be their stress type. They might not have ADHD, they're just an escape artist under a stressful situation and not actually neurodivergent. They just need to learn how to work with their stress type. So that's been kind of an interesting discovery as I've worked with different clients. So they escape artists or flighters are very consistently disassociating, which has become really, really strong behavior, especially as we have these phones in our hands. And so a lot of times dissociative behavior is you'll scroll endlessly, the doom scroll, or you will find yourself up until 1 a.m. playing Tetris on your phone because you just have to turn it off. You do not want to be emotionally uncomfortable, and so you have to stay moving. Another way this manifests is like research-based things or over planning. So some of that paralysis of like, I just can't make a decision until I know all of the facts. Flight types avoid emotional overwhelm by running on stillness. They are naturally wired for motion, but they're so afraid of confrontation that can oftentimes stop them. Number 3 is the freeze. So disconnected thinkers, their core desire is safety, certainty before action, or like an inner calm. They're very afraid of making the wrong choice, and that analysis paralysis will hit them. They really don't like to be judged, and they're very unlikely to be emotionally vulnerable with other people because they just want to be safe and they just want to be calm, versus the flighter who really wants relief. So it's different, relief versus calm, even though those can feel really similar. Sometimes this manifests in actually feeling like they're apathetic, like they don't even care. But they do. They'll watch life maybe instead of participate in it. They withdraw away from connection. They numb, they isolate, they detach, and oftentimes ultimately shut down. Number 4 is fawn, and these are the approval seekers. Their core desire is connection and approval and peace. And so very, very often they won't try to fix anything, because if they just pretend that it's not there, they can get this sense of peace inside the relationship. They despise rejection, and really conflict in general. They do not want to be disappointed in other people. It's very fascinating to me because I am fight and my husband is fawn. And for many years, that caused a ton of misunderstanding around stress and around conflict, because a fighter wants immediate resolution and a fawner wants just approval and peace. And so this one just gives in to this one. But then this one is completely unheard, and this one thinks that she's heard, but she never was, because the fawner just didn't want to disappoint. And so this can manifest in people pleasing. So the fawner is people pleasing the fighter, and so and then the fawner feels resentment toward whoever they're struggling with. But the other person doesn't necessarily know that, because they think that it's fine. So the fawners suppress themselves to keep the peace, to keep people happy. They shape-shift to match experiences. They ultimately abandon themselves because they equate harmony with safety, and so they struggle to set boundaries. So I want you to take a look at your stress type. And then what I want you to do is go through these definitions and think about your child's stress type. So I'm going to give you an example. We have 4 kids with 4 different stress types, and maybe 3. The little one, sometimes it's hard to know for sure. But we have one who's a really, really strong fighter, and so I parent him in stress or conflict pretty differently than my husband parents him in stress or in conflict. He also challenges my husband quite a bit more than he challenges me, because it's subconsciously learned. He knows that if he digs in with his dad does not want the conflict. He wants the peace. And so dad is more likely to cave because of the fawning, versus he knows that mom isn't caving ever, period. And so eventually my will surpass his own will. What I think is interesting is when you and your child have the same stress type, you oftentimes can reach that child better than when you don't. So on the other hand, we have one child who is a fawner. And so dad and him are more connected, because they both want the peace. And so they're very quick. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, I hear I'm sorry from my fawner all the time. Anytime I correct him, oh, I'm sorry, mom. I'm sorry. But what can happen there is that I can attack and get I'm sorry's from him a little bit too much, versus my husband is actually more likely to sit down and have a pleasant conversation, because my confrontations can be abrasive and my husband's can't. One of the things that my mom told me when we first got married was, parent your children, not your husband. And so even though sometimes in the stressful situations I don't appreciate how my husband parents, I let him do it, because he loves my kids as much as I do, and he is equipped to be their father. And it's good to have a balance. So as you're going throughout your week, I want you to think about, pull back a minute, because we are not here to tell you how to be the perfect mother, because she doesn't exist. There are lots of perfect mothers, and we really believe that you are the perfect mother for your children. And so instead of being so hard on yourself, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have done this, just know that we are giving you tools to just grow. Like, you're growing in your motherhood. And so I was at the gym. I just started back at the gym about 8 weeks ago, and I have not been trained in lifting since I was in high school. And my form was real bad, right? But I had a trainer that was standing there watching me. And that trainer didn't say to me, oh, you shouldn't even lift, or you should be upset with yourself that your form is so bad, or, what are you even doing? Get yourself out of the gym. You're not cut out for this. You're not equipped for this, or you're going to, whatever, right? Instead, the trainer says, hey, pull your shoulders back a little bit. Hey, tuck your belly button in. Hey, let's, look here. That's what we want to do in motherhood. And so we're hoping that identifying stress types allows you to take a look at what happened during the stressful circumstance, like later on that night, and say, what was my core desire in this? What was I trying to get out of this? And what was my child trying to get out of this? And then just look for little tweaks on ways you can improve, knowing more about yourself. So
very nice. I'm going to share with you 2 more of what I call my mantras, which are core messages that I want my children to know and internalize as they mature, so that they will become emotionally intelligent, balanced, and compassionate and functional. And that's really the goal that I see in this, is to help you know how to raise kids who are equipped to go out into the world, be adults, and be functional. That's really, if you can get that done, that's pretty good. So my third one is, when they experience pain, first stop and empathize with their pain. So often, and I see this in the playground a lot when I take her kids to the park, parents are like really quick to say, oh, you're okay. And I get that. The goal of that is to say, you're really not hurt that badly, so you can go on playing. And our kids do look for us for guidance on, how badly am I hurt, and how bad do I need to cry, and how do I respond to this? So just for a moment, say, ooh, I bet that hurt. And if it's emotional pain, you can do the same thing when your child gets a little bit older and they have their feelings hurt. First, empathize. First, validate that pain is painful. And once you've done that, then I want you to be able to move into a conversation, and obviously as they get older, your conversation gets deeper, about the human condition. People hurt people, especially hurt people hurt people. Have you ever heard that before? So help them understand, what do you think was going on in that person's life where they cussed you out when you did not deserve to be cussed out at all in that situation? Or, why would somebody kick you on the playground when you weren't even doing anything that would offend them, or etc. Whatever the situation is, whether it be more of a physical pain or an emotional pain, empathize with it, and then help them understand why people do those things. Prepare them that sometimes people are going to hurt you even if you don't deserve it. And I think once they understand that, they'll have a little bit better sense of, how the world works, and they won't be so surprised by it, and they won't be so offended by it. The next one is, I want you to be as just as you can be. I love Micah 6:8, which says, basically, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. So that's a really great formula for being a person who is both compassionate and just. But at the same time, I think it's important that we teach our children that sometimes life is unjust. Injustice is real. And they won't even always necessarily understand why something happened that was so unjust, but they need to know that it will, and they don't need to be stumbled. They don't need to stumble over that. They don't need to feel, I hear people all the time, even adults, I'll hear them say, but that's not fair. And one of the things my dad taught me, my dad was very dysfunctional, but this was a very important message that he sent, and I've used it my whole life, is nothing is fair in the world. Well, I would modify that and say there are things that are fair in the world. I want you to be as fair as you can be. But I also want my children to know that if it's not fair, that's normal. It's not going to always be fair. um, and help them understand sometimes even injustice serves a purpose. Or sometimes somebody does something in the dark and it comes to light and it's revealed. We see that in our, in the news all the time, that somebody's been doing something really horrible, and then they're convicted of it, and maybe it went on way too long, and that's part of the injustice. But at least they did come to the understanding, and they did see justice happen in the end. The other thing that I think is really important in this conversation is that God says that He's in charge of justice and injustice. And so we don't have to work ourselves into a frenzy when things are not just, because that's not part of our job. Our job is to love and to care and be compassionate and be as just as we can be without feeling like we have to correct every wrong that is done. So I'm hoping that those things will really help you. And then, so those are my mantras. And then the other two things that I wanted to talk about is that category of loving your motherhood and giving you some practical tips about just day-to-day things that you can be doing. The first one is that everybody needs to contribute to the household. You want to raise your family and your children that everybody is part of the team, and when something happens and you need teamwork, they need to be part of the team and jump into the huddle and figure out what they can do. And I think you can start this pretty young, like 2 years old. Give that 2-year-old some kind of a job. Let's say your mother-in-law says, hey, I'm coming over and I'll be there in a couple hours, and your house is a pit and you don't want her to see that. You can put everyone in charge of something. A 2-year-old can clean up a corner of the house. And I think it makes everybody feel too like that you are a unit, that they are part of the team, and that it is all of our responsibility to be that. Don't overdo for your children. Let them contribute in the ways that they can contribute, and expect that of them. And then the next one that I wanted to talk about is the truth. It is so important that you teach your child that the truth is safe, and you start this at a very young age. I remember so clearly a situation with my brother where we were all at it might have been Christmas, I think that's what it was, and he answered the phone from my mother. We were at my mother's house, and he lied and said, oh, she's not here right now, can I take a message? And she went, no. I mean, like, quietly she did, and she's like, I want to take the call. And so then he lies again. He goes, oh, I think I hear her walking up the walkway. And my children were, let's say they were between ages maybe 5 and 12. They looked at me like, what is going on here? Because that is not something we were going to do in our household. We weren't going to tell a lie to get out of a situation. We really wanted to teach them that the truth was safe, and that they valued the truth. The bottom line is, if you don't tell the truth, then everything that you say has to be verified. And that's exhausting. You can't have a relationship. And so you basically cease to have language, because your words don't mean anything. And that's what I wanted my kids to know. So even at very young, she would play with her brother, and she would come to me. They were 3 years apart. Maybe she's 6, he's 3. And she'll say, he bit me. And I'll be like, okay, well, tell me the whole story. And she'll say, well, I hit him and then he bit me. And even at a very young age, she understood, like, let's give the context, let's give me the whole thing. One of the things that I worked really hard at is, if my children told me the truth, they either didn't have a consequence for their behavior, or their consequence was very small, because it was so important to emphasize the fact that the truth was the important thing in that scenario, not so much the conflict. Now, one of the things that my husband said that I think was really good, he said, but don't ever let the truth of the situation get ahead of grace. And grace is a free gift that you don't deserve. That's what the word grace means. So I think the way I interpret what he's saying in that is, truth is so important, but if the truth is ugly, something really bad happened, you don't necessarily have to respond ugly, because grace is giving them a free gift that they don't deserve. And so you can say, yeah, I don't like that truth, but I'm still going to err on the side of giving you a gift you don't deserve, loving you, giving you compassion. I mean, we always deserve love, but the response in that situation can be really grace filled, and that's similar to what I was saying when they tell you the truth. That's more important than whatever discord went on. So those are the things that I wanted to share with you today, and I hope they enlighten you in ways that maybe